Picking up right where we left off, number 13, we want to get x by itself. X is clearly on the left side of the equal sign. You don't want that plus 3. You're going to subtract 3. What you do to one side, you're going to do to the other. Why? Because if you subtract 3 from the left side, it's going to get lighter if you're thinking about weight. And that's going to throw it off balance until you actually do the same to the other side. Subtract 3 on that side, it's going to get back to balanced, right? Back to equality. So yes, 3 take away 3 is 0. 7 take away 3 is 4. Bring down the equal sign. Bring down the 2x. So you really have the new simpler equation 2x equals 4, which is really 2 times x equals 4. To get rid of the multiplication of 2, we divide by 2. We do to one side, do to the other side to maintain equality. Our final answer is x equals 2. That's your answer. Type it in with no spaces between your terms. Also, if you wanted to double check it, plug it in right into the x. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 3 is 7. That's your answer. Where's x at? Is it on the left side of the equal sign or on the right side? It's on the right side. The goal of solving any equation is to get x by itself on one side of the equal sign. So I want to get the x by itself on the right side. I need to get rid of this minus 5 and that minus 15. The question is, which one do I get rid of first? I always say, what is the most important thing of solving any equation? It's getting x by itself. That guy is important. The x is important. This guy's kind of important. Why? Because it's with the x. This guy is not important. So get rid of this guy first. This guy's the loner, the bum at the corner. Get rid of that minus 15 by doing the opposite. Plus 15. What you do to one side, do to the other side. Plus 15. And wow, check this out. Negative 15 plus 15, it's also equal to 0. So what do? 0 is a number. It's a whole number, right? So write it out. 0 equals negative 5x. Okay, 0 equals negative 5x. Now, what does this mean that 0 equals negative 5 times x? So how do you get rid of the multiplication of negative 5? Well, you do the opposite, divide by negative 5. And what you do to one side, do to the other side, divide by negative 5. Now, here's where some students get confused. Yes, these guys cancel out. X is by itself. X equals what? Well, what is nothing divided by anything? Well, if you have nothing to start with and you divide it by 2 or by 5 or by negative 5, it doesn't matter what you're dividing by. Nothing divided by something is still nothing. So the answer is 0, right? So how are you going to write it? How are you going to type it in? X equals 0. That is your answer. Okay, let's try this next one. Your x is on the left side. Let's get that x by itself. What do I get rid of first, the 8 or the 2? Remember, x is what's important. 2 is with the x, so wait for that to get rid of that later. This guy's by himself. Get rid of this guy first. How do I get rid of a minus 8? I'm going to do the opposite of minus 8, which is plus 8. That cancels out. What I do to one side, I do to the other side. Maybe I shouldn't say cancels out. That equals 0. It disappears, right? And over here, negative 20 plus 8. If you owe $20 and you have $8, you can't completely pay them off, but you could pay the $8 and you could still say that you owe them $12, right? The equal sign comes down. The negative 2x also comes down, negative 2x. So what is that really saying now? It says negative 2 times x equals negative 12. If you want to get rid of that multiplication of negative 2 in front of the x, you're going to have to divide by negative 2. Divide by negative 2, because what you do to one side, you do to the other. That eliminates. What do I have left? X equaling positive 6. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. And of course, if you were to take that 6 and plug it in, let's do the math. Negative 2 times 6 is negative 12. Negative 12 minus 8. You owe 12, you owe 8. Yes, you're going to owe 20 altogether. This answer is 100% correct. We know we got it right because we double checked it. Let's move on to the next question. The next question is a multiple choice one. It's pretty simple if you've been paying attention. Your goal in the process of solving an equation is your goal to cancel things out? No, it's not, right? It's not to cancel things out. Is your goal to isolate the variable on one side of the equal sign? Yes, you want to get the x by itself, either on the left side of the equal sign or the right side of the equal sign. So this guy right here looks like a winner. This guy right here looks like a winner, okay? B, if we just read through the rest, is your goal to get rid of multiplication with division? No, that's a process of getting the variable by itself. Is your goal to get rid of addition with subtraction? No, that's a process of getting the variable by itself on one side, okay? So that is your answer, the correct answer, B. The other ones are not the goal of solving equations. The other ones are processes, right? Canceling things out. Let's move on to the next question. We have another fraction here, okay? We have negative 2/3 equals negative x. So you might be thinking, oh, I want to get rid of the fraction. Okay, stop right there. You want to begin by thinking, what is my goal? What's the purpose of solving an equation? The goal is to get x by itself on one side of the equal sign. Not to get rid of fractions. I mean, yeah, it's nice to get rid of fractions, but the goal is to get x by itself. X is almost by itself on the right side of the equal sign. All I need to do is get rid of this negative sign. So you could either multiply both sides by -1, or you could divide both sides by -1. In this case, I'm just going to multiply both sides. I don't want a negative x, I want a positive x. So I'm going to multiply that by a -1, and I'm going to multiply this by a -1, okay? So what does it do when you multiply by -1 or divide by -1? All it does is change the sign. So that 2/3, that negative 2/3, this negative 2/3 is going to become positive 2/3. And the negative x right here, when you multiply it by a negative, negative times negative is a positive, so it becomes a positive x. And there's your answer. It's like ridiculously easy, right? All you got to do is switch and put the x first and the 2/3 second. X equals 2/3. And I believe this one is a multiple choice question. That way you don't have to type in the fraction. But yeah, the answer is x equals 2/3. All right, this one's a good one. We have words in algebra, and they want us to write the equation and state the correct answer. So they want us to write the equation and solve it and get the answer. So let's begin reading. It says 2/3. What am I going to write? I want to write 2/3, okay? If I say, like, what's 1/2 of 20? That's really 1/2 times 20, which equals 10. Anytime you read a fraction, write the fraction. And then whatever's next, that's what you're going to multiply it by. So 2/3 of a number. Okay, well, what variable do we use to represent any number? We use the variable x. So we have 2/3 x, okay, 2/3 x, and then it says equals 6, okay, equals 6. There's your equation, 2/3 x equals 6. Let me write it all in the same color, 2/3 x equals 6. So now I need to solve it. I don't want a fraction, actually, I want the x by itself. So I don't want this fraction, right? I want to get rid of the whole thing. So one option is to recognize that you're multiplying by a fraction 2/3. So you could divide by the fraction 2/3, which would cancel it out. And over here, you have to remember that dividing by a fraction is really multiplying by the reciprocal. That might be a little confusing. It's a lot more easy to just think of this. This really says 2 divided by 3. If you don't want this divided by 3, you could get rid of the divided by 3 simply by multiplying by 3. That'll cancel it out, as long as what you do to one side, you do to the other side. What do we have left? 2x equals 18. That's really a 2 times x equals 18. Why 18? Because 6 times 3 is 18, right? But now you have 2 times x equals 18. To get rid of the multiplication in front of the x, the multiplication of 2, I'm going to do the opposite of that, dividing by 2. And what I do to one side, I do to the other side. That cancels out. X equals 9. That is your answer. If you want to be 100% positive, you could take that 9, plug it in, multiply. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 2 times 3 is 6. You'll be sure that you have the right answer by plugging it in like that. Anyway, that's your answer. X equals 9. Type it in with no spaces between your terms. And let's move on to the next question. Don't get confused with those parentheses. It's pretty simple, guys. Whenever you have a minus minus right next to each other, what happens? It changes to plus plus, right? Okay, minus minus right next to each other, what happens? It changes to plus plus. So you could rewrite this thing. There is no need for parentheses. There's an actual plus sign in front of it, right? So you're not multiplying 8 times x. There's a plus sign between it. So you really have 8 plus, you don't really need the parentheses, and you don't need another plus sign in front of the x, equals -1. Okay, so now let's get the x by itself on one side of the equal sign. Obviously, we're going to get it by itself on the left side of the equal sign. We don't want this plus 8. We don't want this positive 8. So I'm going to get rid of a positive 8 by subtracting 8. Now, of course, what I do to one side, I do to the other side. That will give us x equaling, if you owe $1 and you owe $8, you're going to owe $9 altogether. There's your answer. X equals -9. Could be a little confusing thinking of plugging it back in, because in here a negative negative 9 is positive. So you really have 8 take away 9. 8 take away 9 is -1. But if you do double check it, it should work out the way it just did right now. Let's move on to the last question of this video, number 20. X is on the left side. Let's get it by itself. Okay, where's the x at? It's here on the left side of the equal sign. Is it by itself? No, there's a 5 and a -2. So what do we get rid of first? Again, x is what's important. 2 is with x, so don't mess with the 2. It's with the x. It's kind of important. This guy is the loner, the guy way by himself, right? So let's get rid of the 5. How do I get rid of 5? Now, remember, this minus sign does not belong to the 5. This minus sign belongs to the 2. That's technically a -2 if you wanted to call it a -2. But over here, this is a +5. So how do I get rid of a +5? I do the opposite of +5 by subtracting 5, right? And what I do to one side, I must do to the other side, subtract 5. My new equation, what's left over? A -2x, which is technically a -2x. A minus and a negative are pretty much the same thing. And then on the right side, if you owe $15 and you owe $5, man, you owe a lot. How much do you owe? You owe $20, okay? So this is our new simplified equation. We're one step away from our answer. What does it say? It says -2 times x equals -20. To get rid of the multiplication of -2, you're going to have to do the opposite, divide by that exact value, -2. And what you do to one side, do to the other side. That cancels out. X is all by itself. That's the goal, getting x by itself. X equals, what is -20 divided by -2? A negative divided by a negative is a positive, and that is a 10, +10. There is my answer, x equals 10. If you were to plug in 10 right in here, 2 times 10 is 20. So imagine that, 5, take away 20. You have $5, you owe $20, you're going to still owe 15. So we have double checked it. We are 100% positive that x equals 10 is the correct answer. Type it in, no spaces between your terms, hit enter, you're going to get this question right. Alrighty guys, I hope these videos help. Good luck on the quiz.